So, welcome to the Gin and Tonic show. It's the 2nd of August, 2015, and we're going to be talking about Sharia a bit. We're going to be talking about things that have been happening here in the last couple of days, just to bring everybody up to date. And the way that it works is that the Gin and Tonic show is about Islam, right? So the way we work is we have the definitions, then we have the video of the week, then we have misconception of the week. Then I normally go through some news, and I've changed the thing a bit that I actually welcome a little bit of feedback on the news, where in the past I would just sort of rush through them to get to the topic, but I think actually it's a part of the whole thing. And Arash was the one to show me this, because he interacted with the news, where sometimes we started talking about the news a little bit too much. But it's okay, because it's part of what is going on in Islam, and I think it's important. Then we get to the topic, and today we're going to be talking about Sharia, I hope. And then we're going to be listening to the Hadith of the week, which is going to be presented either by Alasa or somebody who has found a Hadith. At the moment, my absolute favorite is Ali, and he's animated to recite the Hadith of the week. Now, the way that it works is, ideally, this is a discussion platform. Okay, I would like people to participate. I would like people to just be part of the whole show, and not just have me or some like 2 or 3 people talking to somebody else and discussing only their views. For me, it would actually be perfect if we did have Muslims here who would be able to show their version. Now, I'm hoping that we're going to hear something a little bit about Mormons today, because so we have somebody who knows somebody who can talk about this. And it's always interesting to hear about other, thought systems, belief systems, world views, or things like that, because Islam is pretty complicated. Okay, so like I said, Gin and Tonic show, we first do some definitions, because what I think is we should first go and define what it is that we're talking about, because we talk about Islam not from the standpoint of somebody who is selling Islam or is glorifying Islam or is trying to make Islam look better or nicer or whatever for others. No, we try and be more realistic. We try and be skeptical about things and try and analyze what it is that people say about Islam. So we are here as non-believers. Now, I always hesitate, but I need to do this, all right? There's no other way around. There's no way around it. I'm not an atheist. I'm a person. I'm just a human being. Now, as a human being, I am by default not a racist, because I'm a nice human being. And I'm a normal human being in that I don't need to label myself as being a racist if I am, just a normal human being. I think if somebody is a human being and a racist, then you should label that person and call them out as being such. And if somebody is a theist and wants to believe that gods exist, well, then so be it. And I don't think that I should be called something that I am not. Like, I'm also not a golfer. I don't play golf. And I don't walk around and saying, hello, I'm Stopspamming, I am an A-golfer. And I think, I don't know why I need to say, well, I'm Stopspamming and I am an atheist. Because an atheist is just the opposite of a theist. In other words, a theist is somebody who believes that, gods exist, or there's a reason to believe that there is evidence for the existence of gods. And I am not. I just don't believe that. So as a theist, as the opposite of a theist, I don't make any statements, I don't make any claims. There's nothing that I would say. It's just that I am missing a belief, and that is that gods exist, and that's it. So as an atheist, I don't do anything. As a person, absolutely. As a skeptic, yes. I mean, I have a worldview, absolutely, but it is not in any way dominated, or in any way, it has nothing to do with being a non-believer. This does not, it doesn't feature in my description of a personality. So the same way as I am not a believer, I don't follow any isms that I know of. I'm not, like communism or something. I don't think democracy is particularly well, established in our society. I don't think capitalism is something that I strive for, because I think it's especially the way that it's being implemented at the moment. I don't agree with that. So I'm not an ism anything, and least of all atheism, because I'm not following a goal that there is no God. I'm not following the doctrine which says that there is no God, or some dogma or something. No, it's just that I'm missing this belief, and that is it. So there's no ism. So I don't understand why people always say atheism is an untenable condition or something like that. To me, it always, it's like fingernail scratching over a blackboard. But I accept the term, okay? I mean, I have to tell people that I am an atheist, just to make a stand and tell people that this is my stance towards gods, which means I don't have a stance towards gods. And because I don't have a stance towards gods, I don't believe them. So I will look at these claims that they make from an objective point of view. Just as I don't think that there's funny things like free will. That to me is hilarious. Or things like objective morality. I mean, things like that are totally alien to me. So anyway, so we're talking from a point of view of somebody who does not believe that these gods exist. And it's quite funny that we should be talking about a particular god. One of the many gods that exist on the planet today is the God in Islam. And this is the God that we're talking about and discussing. So if somebody wants to join us, then absolutely go ahead and explain it. We had somebody here who was able to explain Ahmadiyya, but for some odd reason that fell through. And I'm so sorry, because I would have loved to have that person here to explain to us the belief that is called Ahmadiyya, because I'd really love to know. Now, if I believe that dragons exist, then I'm called a dragonist. You see, it's so stupid. This doesn't exist. The same way as I don't believe dragons exist, I'm an a-dragonist. So is my personality governed by being an a-dragonist? No, I don't wake up in the morning thinking, oh goodness, how am I going to get through the day? There are no dragons to worship or something. No. So, and we're looking at Islam. Now, Islam is a socio-political system. It's an ideology. It's a political ideology and a worldview, a way of life. And the religion itself, that part determines the other elements. But if you look at a historical approach, you will see that Islam has always been some sort of a nation, a national governance where the entire population of a particular region has been, subjugated to Sharia. In other words, the rulings which are derived from the Quran and the Sunnah, which is supposed to then represent the will of a God, the one God, the one and only God, because according to Islam there is only one God. There is no Jesus, there's no Holy Spirit. Well, you have Jesus and you have Holy Spirit, but they don't have the roles. So they have modified the role that these things play, that they are no longer co-gods, and they're not part of anything. So there is no Trinity or something like this, but there's only the one and single God. And this is the way that Islam is structured, that you have God. But it's not quite that easy, because you also have Muhammad, you have the Quran, you have the Kaaba, you have the stone, you have a whole host of things which are worshipped in Islam. And what we're looking at is all the different statements, because in Islam, the Sharia is yes, it is about the family law, but it's also about, how to treat people internally, how to treat people externally. In other words, like foreign affairs, or if you go into war, how to treat war criminals, and how you treat prisoners of war and things like that. So at the same time, you have these statements about legal matters, what somebody inherits or something like that. So that is also there. Okay, then this is why we call, or I call Islam an ideology. And the ideology is a political ideology because we have the idea that the goal of Islam is the implementation of Sharia, and we have several Islamic nations on this planet. Like, for example, we have the Islamic Republic of Iran. So they have a constitution which says that the entire constitution is based on their God. So the God is the number one issue where this God determines everything else. So this is why I maintain that it's most of all a socio-political system. The social comes in because the rituals around Islam are governed by the social thing, where everybody contributes and everybody joins in. So if you come to a new country as a Muslim, if you find a mosque somewhere, you're immediately welcomed, you're immediately part of the group of the Ummah. And this is what is brilliant about Islam, that they have this communal system where everybody calls yourself brothers and sisters and things like that. So this is part of Islam. Okay, so this is the definition. This is what we're talking about. This is who we are. This is the whole thing. The video of the week that I selected is actually the one that I selected yesterday, which disappeared, last week, which disappeared. Because I thought this Noah Feldman, who's a professor at Harvard Law School, now he's got several videos up where he discusses political Islam and legal aspects of the Sharia. And he has a whole series, and I think it's worth looking at some of them because he explains the legal ramifications of this. And this is quite valuable if you want to learn about Quran and about the legal aspects of Sharia. The guy is, and this is the problem with YouTube. I was able to later on, put some comments on there that are, if I go to archive, it's a little bit more difficult. I've been unable to sometimes add stuff. It just disappears and stuff like that. So the guy is Noah Feldman, and he's at Harvard Law School. The misconception of the week is Quran versus Quran. Now, I'm constantly being told I have to say Quran or Quran, or the way the Klink Show used to say this, Quran. I don't do that for the simple reason that this is ancient Arabic. Quran means in Arabic the recitation. Okay, so I don't speak ancient Arabic. And I never studied it. I mean, hardly anybody does. It's a handful of people. I think it's only 0. How many was 3? So 0.0001% of the of Muslims have studied ancient Arabic, and they would then be able and entitled to say Quran. Otherwise, it's the normal spelling, which is Quran. The funny thing is that people then leave out the apostrophe and just make it a Qur, which in English you would actually make it a Quran. So nobody calls it a Quran. So I think the Quran with Koram is the most reasonable spelling and is the most accepted spelling worldwide. So people who learn a little bit about Islam, then they start calling it Quran because they think this is so cool, because it's the Islamic way, but it's not. It's actually Arabic way. And if you don't speak Arabic, I mean, it's the same as you don't say Khruntep or something if you call it Bangkok, or you don't say Moskva, but you say Moscow. So this is just the English way. Now let's go to news. Let me just see if there's now. The thing is with if you go to the live.godless.ch, the beauty is that you can then participate in the form of comments that you can type. So GPZ starts off with hello Dragon and Tonic viewers, month of the blue moon. I thought it was the red moon. Isn't it coming to the end days or something? Ali Dawa posted a YouTube video with the title "Why I Am Leaving Islam," rickrolling the entire London Muslim community. Oh, that should be interesting. I mean, Ali Dawa I think he's a complete idiot. But it should be. I wonder what he says in this video, because he was doing videos together with what's his face again? Was it no? It wasn't Dawa Films. What's his? Dawa Man, the Sperminator, exactly. He was making videos with him, so this should be quite funny. And he's got a piece of news for us. The barking mad Turkish president, Mr. Erdogan, has said his only concern is Islam. We have only one concern. It is Islam. Islam and Islam. It's impossible for us to accept the overshadowing of Islam. Islam is damaged from what is all being done now. We all have to show the will to categorically deny terrorism without looking at its basis or identity. Well, exactly. And then he goes and bombs ISIS and the Kurd PKK. I mean, this is so hypocritical. I don't know what this guy is doing. I mean, he's so full of nonsense. He's trying to get Turkey accepted as a modern country, and then he goes off and says women's rights. What is women's rights? No, we go according to the Quran, and this is so funny. And so it was Dawa man. Okay. Anyway, so let's go to the news that I have selected. The news that I have is just 3 items. One is Daesh. Surprise, surprise. One is this funny plane crash that happened in the UK, and then KSA wants to get off the list. So KSA is the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, so I'll just mention this a little bit. Now, if somebody wants to participate on this, go ahead, just say hi or put a comment into the live stream, and we'll just talk about it. So the first item that I found, or that I found interesting, was a guy who says, "My life was hard and nobody liked me." And he said this while he was crying. "I didn't have many friends. I was in the internet a lot and was playing games." And this is end quote now, because this is what he said. Because this is becoming a familiar story. Socially isolated and not really knowing what they're doing. People who lack a meaning in their lives and who can't see themselves doing anything useful, they are seduced by the jihadis' promise, because they're telling them, okay, you're doing something good, you're doing something for your God, you get a salary, you get a house, and you get a wife, and on top of which you are doing something useful for your life, for your afterlife, for your future. It's like a pension. So what you do now is you just pay in, you wear their funny, I don't know, actually these funny military style clothing, and then some balaclava or something, and then this is then the Daesh kind of attire that you wear. Then you carry an AK-47 with you, which you sort of point at the sky whenever a camera is near you, and that is your job. And you get paid for that. You get a house and you get a wife, so you don't have to worry about it. You have, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and then their atrocities continue. And like now, they're throwing men they believe are gay, throwing them off buildings, beheading those that they hate, and force converting. And this is the worst. They're converting children, and they're giving them swords and then making them play with them, practicing killing their own mothers and beheading them, and it's horrible. And Muslims, like the general majority, like Erdogan, they can't control them, and some even cheer their Islamic goals in the form of what I said before, the nation running under Sharia. So they found that more than half the people in the UK, the Muslims in the UK, support the goals of Daesh. They don't necessarily support the beheading. They don't necessarily support the executions. They don't necessarily support the way that kids are being used to execute people. But the system, they go and support. And if there were, come on, we're going to get there. There's going to be an Islamic party. Then this is going to get the support by the Muslims, regardless of how ruthless and stupid this is going to be. This is the problem. I don't see anything bad in somebody believing something if it comforts him. Okay, it might not be true, but if I look at if there's a movie, what is it, the something of lying, the beginning of lying, or the invention of lying, or something like this, where a guy goes to his mother and they can't lie, and he is the first one that knows how to lie, and he tells her, look, you are dying from cancer, but it's not going to be so bad because your God is there, and you're going to have your dog and your children, your parents and everybody waiting for you, and you're going to get a mansion in the sky and things like that. And then the mother says, oh, really, is that? And, she acts like it's going to comfort her. And this is what religion is doing to people. It gives you a false sense of security. But if you need that to get through the day, I mean, why should I take that away from people? Why should I take away hope where people have this hope because they think that there's a God? I would not do that. I would not want to do that. It's just when they want me to believe what they believe, then we're going to have a problem here. But otherwise, no. And Islam has some positive aspects. There are some positive aspects that Islam, if you cherry pick them, will tell its people to behave well and to be modest and to be humble and not to do this and not to do that. So there are some positive aspects. There's also negative ones, but this is the problem. Muslims are not owning their own ideology. So anyway, so this is why we have this. Then there was a plane crash of an executive jet in the southern UK, which killed the Jordanian pilot and three passengers, and two of them apparently were part of the Bin Laden family. And this you find in the news. I don't quite. What is the relevance of this? Well, for me, it's none, I guess, because it's okay. Three people, the pilot. People get killed in jets all the time. It happens. Shit happens. So just because the passengers or two passengers were called Bin Laden, I mean, the father made buildings in construction, okay? He's had like 40, 50 kids. And from an unspecified number of women, I might add, nobody really knows how many women he impregnated to have 50 or 60, maybe it's even 60 kids, nobody knows. And what happened is they disowned Osama bin Laden when he turned violent. So now somebody from this large family got killed because they went on holiday to the UK. So this is quite strange. Anyway, Saudi also wants to get off the list because Saudi is still part of an investigation. Where they're still digging, I mean, in the US, they're still digging around the lives of the people who were involved in the, September 11, 2001 attacks on the the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. And most of them, they lived in Saudi at some stage. 15 or 17, I can't even remember the number, were actually Saudi citizens. And KSA is saying, well, actually, we are not, as a country, we are not to blame for this. Just because some people were involved, we cannot control everything and every action of our citizens, which is actually true. It's just the question is that always pops up in my mind is, how much support did they really get? If somebody comes to the police in Saudi Arabia and says, listen, we know that there's going to be guys going into the US and they're planning something horrible, would Saudi as a country have reacted and actively investigated this and possibly even arrested these people if they would have known about something? I don't know. And this is something that I ask myself. But of course they want to be off the list here because they don't want to be implied or indicted in any way when it comes to this terrorist act. Now, at the same time, we're talking about the couple, the people that were killed in the UK who went on holiday, and I think this is such a hypocrisy because the French, they at the moment, the South Coast, everybody knows it. Everybody knows the Côte d'Azur, and now the Saudi king, Mr. Salman, not Solomon, but Salman, and he came to town, okay, and a beach was cordoned off, and female cops were banned, and building activity just carried on without planning or license or anything. And people were protesting, and people said, well, why is this guy now coming? They forget that if for example, we had President Obama here the other day. This was horrible, the whole city. You've got 2.5 million people or 4 million people which are directly affected by one person coming to town. And just because he's the president of the US, everybody has to change their lives just because he's coming to town. When he was in the south of Germany, the whole south of Germany had to change everything. You couldn't go there, you couldn't do this, you couldn't... it's crazy just because one guy decides to pop in. I don't understand this. But now the funny thing is because the king of Saudi Arabia arrived in the south of France, everybody's smiling. because he brought 1,000 people with him, because, as you know, that is his entourage, and they're spending money like it's going out of fashion. So you have, I mean, I used to be part of this because I was, helping out when it came to organizing cars for these people, because it's actually quite difficult, especially in the UK. In the UK, you can't rent big cars. You can't rent a Mercedes S-Class or a 7 BMW or Audi A8 or something like this. So I used to organize them from Germany and then, just have them driven over there. And now the same thing is happening in France. So you have, every available driver, every available limo, every available this and this, they're all in the south of France. So it's giving the French a huge boost, especially in the south of France, because you've got 1,000 people spending money like crazy. So, yeah. Okay, so these were the news that I found worthy of mentioning. If anybody wants to add, like GPZ does with our favorite Turkish president, then please go ahead. Otherwise, and it's now past, which I think is perfect timing, spending half an hour on this. We have a topic where I'm hoping we're going to have some participation from people, because this is something that I can't talk about on my own. Otherwise, we're going to have a very short show. Because it's about Sharia. Now, we've already heard, I think everybody's heard about Sharia, but most people don't really know what it is, because there is no definition. There is no such thing as this is Sharia. There is no book which is called Sharia. There is no single definition of Sharia. This is the huge problem. It's the same thing as everything in Islam. If you read the Quran, there is no clear-cut statement. There's a clear-cut statement. Even you're not allowed to eat pork is not that clear-cut, because it says the blood of pork and of swine, and it's not that clear-cut anyway. So you always have to go and interpret things. And entire portions of the Quran are like completely nonsensical. Nobody can understand them. And I'm not only talking about the 29 single-letter verses. No, I'm talking about entire sentences which make no sense. And the same thing is the case now with Sharia, because what they're saying is Sharia is based on the Quran. But if people can't understand the Quran, how can you have something which is legal, in other words, which should be defined and determined, and it should be fixed and everything, which is based on something that is completely void of any kind of definition. I just realized that I've missed some advice on YouTube. Story interview with the father of one of jihadi brides. Converting indoctrination is surely what all religions do. Oh, absolutely. Apparently they stalk the kids on the phones, and this is true. The internet, I was hoping that there was going to be more impact from Anonymous, because they announced that they were going to hack the accounts and the pages of Daesh, which has happened to a certain degree and extent, but it's not as huge impact as I had hoped it would have. So people are being contacted via Twitter and Facebook, and they are shown what a wonderful life it is and how much they can contribute to their God and the overall success story. And the marketing of Daesh is proving to be quite quite successful. I don't understand it. I think a lot of people don't, but it is successful with certain groups of people, the way I've described it earlier. The father said they saw kids on there. She wanted to change her mobile phone number and get her to a point where she would enter an empty home. Then she runs off to Syria. And ISIS paints Syria as a Disneyland for Muslim kiddies. Yeah, exactly. The crash is a mystery, apparently. Oh, this plane in the UK. No, it shouldn't have happened, because nobody knows what happened. They haven't recovered the recorders yet. Religion should also not exist, but it does. Well, the thing is, religion... it was invented at some stage because people didn't know how to make sense of lightning and thunder and eclipse of the sun and the Vikings. I found this quite interesting. They went and they were howling because they thought it was a wolf somehow chasing the moon across the sun. So they were howling and they were clamoring, they were making a noise, and they were taking instruments and banging them and blah, blah, blah. so that the wolf would get a fright and would bring back the son. And it worked. Okay, so in their eyes, them making a noise on earth helped bring back the sun, so that the wolf stopped chasing the moon and, brought back the sun. Now, because this was so successful, they couldn't stop, because they didn't have the courage to now go and say, well, let's test this. Let's stop making a noise and see if the sun comes back anyway, because they were too shit scared not to make a noise, just in case the sun wouldn't come back. So this is quite a funny thing, that you do something which is apparently, or is an apparent cause for something else, but it isn't. But because you believe it is, you can't stop doing it because you're afraid of the consequences of you stopping. This is like me stopping believing in gods. I mean, if you sit there and you wait for this bolt of lightning to hit you because you're having naughty thoughts that gods don't exist as a kid, so it's not easy. And it takes some confidence and courage and things to do this, to go through this thing. And the Vikings couldn't do it. So in the beginning, people had to have a religion. They had to have this God to explain all these things. And come on, I must admit, it's pretty cool to think that there's a God there. And the guy who always squeezes in front of you because he's a cheater on the highway, nobody is going to... I don't know. He's never going to get any consequence from his stupidity and from his selfishness. But if there's a God, wow, isn't that cool? Because now he's being deducted 5 points or something. So that kind of a God I would like. But so I can understand that people turn to a God the same way as some people think it would be cool to have a Spider-Man or Superman or something like this. So yeah, so this is why we had religions. This is how they came. I mean, it's only then, in the last, 300 years, that we started thinking about this, and we came up with an alternative which allowed us not to believe in gods. And that's what we're doing now, because less and less people believe this stuff. This is only, I think it's more of a personality thing, whether you believe in religion than anything else, because you have intelligent people who still believe in gods because they still need them, because their personality says, well, I would like to reserve judgment, and I would like to believe that there is a God, and this would be cool. Well, that's it. I just prefer reality, even if it's harsh. I would like to know I have cancer and I'm going to die. Then at least I know that is the case, and that's it. If then I don't die, well, then great stuff. But other than that, at least I know where I am, at least I know where I stand. I don't want somebody to lie to me and say, yeah, you're going to have 15 years still, and then suddenly, poof, I beg off. No. All right, so this is why they have religions, and this is why a lot of people still believe this nonsense. Okay, I mean it is nonsense, but if they want to believe it, why not? Okay, so let's go to Sharia. Sharia is based on the Quran and is based on the Sunnah. Now, but neither the Quran nor the Sunnah is well defined. Okay, so this is just your personal opinion, and your personal opinion is then elevated into the wishes of a God, and this is the way that it works. Now, what is Sharia? Now, if you go and look at the Quran, if you go, for example, let's take inheritance, okay, because I happen to know them by heart. So if you go to 4:11, 4:12, and 4:176, my goodness, I remember all these things. You see that the way that they are written is completely nonsensical. In other words, in 4:11, it says, for example, if a man dies and he has more than 2 daughters, 3 or 4 daughters, they get 2/3 of the inheritance. Okay, cool. It also says that if the guy has parents, they each get 1/6. Now, if he has a mother and a father, which are both alive, 1/6 plus 1/6 is 2/6, which normally is 1/3. So what you have is 2/3 for the 3 daughters and 1/3 for the parents. That means the inheritance is gone. But the Quran says, no. You have another 6th for this, and another 12th for this, and another half for this, and another this. So in the end, you oversubscribe like 15 times. So this doesn't make sense. So a lot of, scholars have thought about this problem, because they also look, I mean, they're not stupid. So they realized, oops, we have a problem here, and they went and tried to fix it. Like, nobody has ever been able to fix it. So now you've got Sharia, which is based on the Quran, and the Quran is ridiculously wrong. Now you have a wrong ruling in the Quran, which is now being interpreted by humans and put into Sharia. And this is now implemented as the law of the land. So you can see where this is going. Nobody really knows what is happening. So you have a legal system which, for example, regulates inheritance depending on air pressure or, I don't know, humidity or something like this, because there is no real, I mean, especially in law, you have, it has to be very clear that, I mean, if there's a speed limit of 50, you have to specify, is it 50 kilometers per hour or is it miles per hour? And is it when it rains, or is it a general one? Is it between certain times, or is it whatever? So you need to be very clear before, because you're going to have consequences. Okay, so the legal aspects always have consequences. And the consequences are exactly what makes a law something that works or something that doesn't work. So we've had laws. I mean, you know that there are still laws which, especially in the US, this is always quite funny when you go into the most hilarious laws in the US or something. It's quite funny where you still have laws where, I don't know, I can't think of one now. I'm definitely not a factual one, so I'll have to make one up, where it's still illegal to hang on to a motor car without the driver being present in the driver's seat, or something like this. They have ridiculous laws. Or where you're not allowed to sit on the top of a bus which has electric cables overhead, or something stupid like that. But they also have these things where it says if a man has a wife or something and she leaves him or something, he is not allowed to, I don't know what. I mean, it's crazy. And a lot of these laws, especially in the US, are based on sexual something. Like, you're not allowed to have sex with so-and-so under these and these conditions. Like, there will be a law that the lights must be out after 10 o'clock if you're having sex or something with your spouse. It's ridiculous. And the same ridiculous laws you have in Sharia, where, the rulings are, is the wife allowed to lie naked next to her husband at night in bed? And, this is something that needs to be discussed. I don't understand this. Now, as you have, the gays, for example, what happens if you are gay? Are you thrown off a building the way that Daesh is doing this because there's some hadith somewhere? Or is it, well, actually, you can be gay, it's just that if you are caught doing the homosexual act, this is what it says. So the action of being homosexual, that is prohibited. Now that we cannot. You can be gay as much as you want to. You can polish your fingernails, and you can put on makeup, and you can wear dresses. Oh, no, they wear dresses anyway. Okay, but you can whatever, and you can be gay, and you can be outwardly gay, but you're not allowed to act the gay. If you are doing the gay act, then I'm sorry, then we need to kill you. Well, no, we're not going to kill you. Actually, we're going to punish you. How are we going to punish you? Well, we don't know yet. So it's really quite stupid to have a law which is completely arbitrary. But there's also a positive aspect, and that is there is no clear-cut ruling. For example, if a mother comes there with a child and says, well, the father is not a good Muslim anymore, and he started drinking and he's taking drugs and he's playing roulette on the on the internet all the time, then the judge, the Islamic judge, can go and rule on this one occasion. So he doesn't have to go and say, well, the law is that if this and this, then this is the result, this is the consequence. No, he can go and rule according to what he feels is right, because he can find a hadith, he can find something, some interpretation somewhere which will justify his ruling. So there's positive and there's negative. So Sharia, in the way that it is implemented today as a form of family law, is not always automatically negative in its implementation. So the way that a lot of people are handling this, in the UK, for example, I think UK is the country with the most Sharia courts today. Then there are some positive aspects. But the problem is there are more negatives than positives. Because you have this, I don't know, this personal opinion-based legal system, where if a woman, for example, goes and somebody says, well, she's had sex with so-and-so, or the husband goes and says, I suspect her, of being unfaithful to me, and my brother, my cousin, and two other witnesses, they saw her having sex. Well, then that's it. This woman can die, all right? She can be put to death by stoning. And even though stoning, now we have the next complication, stoning is not mentioned in the Quran. So if it's not mentioned in the Quran, what is stoning doing in Islam? Why is it there? Well, it's because somebody said that Muhammad said this. Well, and now we have the next problem, because now how do we test this this personal story that somebody says, well, he heard Muhammad say ABC, and then somebody else heard this from his tailor, and then this gets passed on, and the hairdresser tells one of his customers, who then gives it to his son, and who then gives it to his cousin, and blah, blah. And then eventually, 300 years later, somebody called Bukhari writes down, Muhammad said ABC. And this is word for word, literal, and 100%, and it's gospel truth and everything. That's exactly how it happened. Now, in science, personal testimony is completely rejected because it's useless. That's why people have dash cams in the cars, because the courts do not go what people are telling them, but they go by what the recordings say. And this is why people have these cameras in the cars, because personal testimony is useless. Our brains, unfortunately, are really stupid. They're still stuck in some developmental episode of, 10,000 years ago. So unfortunately, our brains are useless. And that is why personal testimony doesn't really work. But in Sharia, it's very much part of it. So you can get somebody killed by just going and just lying. And this is why, for example, the Jinn and Tonic show was closed, because people just lied. And this is how they work. You have, I don't know if you know about these hidden channels where you have entire groups that go around and false flag people, and you just book them. You go there and you say, okay, I need you to do something because this atheist is like really bad, and this atheist who follows atheism, and he's a hater, and because every critic of Islam is automatically a hater. They go and then they say, okay, go and tell YouTube that he has spread hate or violence or something like that. And then, of course, YouTube is forced to close the channel. And this is the way that it works. So this is how they are used to working like this. This is the way that Sharia works. You go and you say this is the case. And in some cases, it might actually be the truth. Okay? You don't know this. You have no clue whether it is the truth if you go by personal testimony. But personal testimony is something that is alive within Sharia. All right, so then if we go out of the family courts, it gets even worse, okay? Because now we talk about apostasy and things like that. And there we have very funny rulings, because in the Quran, apostasy as such is not really an offense. It only becomes an offense if somebody leaves the fold, the ummah, and then conspires against the ummah, against Islam, or talks against the group or something. And this is then put into context by saying, again, Muhammad was under condition where people were leaving, and then they were joining the opposition, and then they started fighting. Because in Islam, everything is about fighting. It's violence, okay? You are stronger if you are violent. If you can have sex with your opponent's mother, then you have violated his integrity, and therefore you are stronger than him. This is the way that it works. So what happens is that these people who left the group of Muhammad and then fought against them, they were then, even though they used to be part of that group, they were told, no, these people are no longer part of the group, you are not allowed to kill them. And if you look at the history now of Islam, you will understand why that is. Because it is deemed as spying, as a criminal act against the country, against the nation, against the whole group of people, against all the citizens. And this is why then this is considered to be something which needs to be punished, and heavily punished, because it's treason against the state. And that is what these people have committed. And historically, it made a lot of sense. If somebody wanted to fight for the opposition, then you were allowed to kill them, even though they were a part of your group only last week. And that's the way that it is. But now, if we look at, human leaders tend to be corrupt, and if we look at democracy today, it's unjust. It's simply, it doesn't function. So now Sharia comes along, but it's based on the wishes and decrees by a God, okay, this creator God, blah, blah, blah. So this is God's law. And this is why they want to get away with it. This is why they're saying, okay, the apostate needs to be killed because automatically he conspires against us. So in the beginning, it was only if he fought for the opposition, and then it was if he only creates mischief. And now creating mischief is down to interpretation, and this goes from fighting against you towards just being against you. Because anybody who is not with you is automatically against you. That is the whole thing. And that is why suddenly in Sharia you have somebody who simply leaves the fold will get killed because of that. I mean, it's shallow, it's superficial, it's illogical, but this is the way that... Now, then you have politics, okay? Now, you have a different area of the Sharia, again, which concerns itself with politics. And there you have different rulings again. I mean, if you go and you look at Muhammad, who said that his followers, the fighters, the slaves of Allah, they were allowed to enjoy their orgasm inside the female captives. And they didn't have to worry about the price on the slave market, because Allah would make sure that they would not fall pregnant, and they wouldn't have to worry about the prices. Now, this is that Allah said to his people. So this is reflected in Sharia. So you see the brutality and the barbaric customs that they used to have 1,000 years ago, you see reflected in Sharia today. And this is why the people who say, well, we are talking about the real Islam, have a problem, because the people talking about the real Islam might well be talking about this version of Islam, this barbaric version. You don't know what version of Islam they are talking about until they actually specify it for you. But then again, it's not God's law, it's their law. So it's down to what humans say. So there's no God who comes down and says, okay, this is what I want done in this case. No, it's humans doing this. GP says, so Sharia is part Quran, part Hadith, bits that you like. Exactly. This is exactly how it works. You take, okay, the number one, I think by now we know the different levels of the text in Islam. You have the Quran, which is the primary text, which is the highest authority. Then you have the Qudsi Hadith, which are like in between the Quran and the Hadith. The Hadith are then the second level text, and then you have the Sirah, the biography. And after that, you get the ulema, the so-called ijma, the consensus of the people who know Islam. So you have scholars who then say, well, if we take the Quran, if we take the Hadith, and we put everything together, we've looked at the Hadith, we looked at the contents, we looked at the Isnad, the whole chain of narration and everything. We put everything together, and we say this is authentic, and the Quran, and we come to the reasonable solution or ruling that this is what this God said. But this is the human being who is interpreting the Quran, because the Quran doesn't give you anything strict. It doesn't mention alcohol is prohibited. This is a human who said this 300 years later. So now they have to go and they have to look, well, the Quran doesn't say you have to stone people, you have to kill gays, you have to not drink alcohol, blah, blah, blah. But the Hadith do mention these sort of things. Now, how do we now go? Then they look at the Hadith and they look at the environment, then they look at the stories, then they look at the biography, and then they say, well, actually, because it says in Hadith number blah, 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 this, and then this is this. So from all this, we deduct that what the Quran was trying to say is this, but never really got around to doing that. And then the Hadith, because this one is deemed authentic, then we can, with some level of security and confidence, we can say that this is what we're trying to say. This is what this God would want. And now we have this is getting complicated, because now there's an additional level, because you don't only go into what this God wants and what this God says about a prescribed action or a prohibited action. Now you also have to go and look, for example, this is what just jogged my memory with the alcohol, because the Quran doesn't say anything about the drinking of alcohol. It only warns of the effects of alcohol and what a devil would implement in getting you to think something bad. Okay, so that's all the Quran says. But now Muhammad he went totally moggy, because he himself drank some wine, but he prohibited even vinegar, because anything to do with fermentation was prohibited. So we have the Quran not really saying anything about it. In fact, saying there's some good in it and maybe not so good. And so there's 4 different stages of mentioning what the word khamr is what sort of blankets the mind, what you have there. And then this is mentioned in the Hadith, and then the Hadith say this, and then there's the biography says something, and now they're saying, okay, from these different elements, we think what it means is that you shouldn't drink alcohol. So this is a whole long process, and then you have one guy saying this, then you have the second guy saying this, you have one guy saying, no, it's actually not true. Then you have Quranists who said, what the fuck are you talking about? It doesn't say so in the Quran, so if it doesn't say so in the Quran, any God worth his money would have put this in the Quran if this would have been his wish. He didn't, so in other words, why should we do that? The same way as Quranists will not see the covering of women because it's not mentioned in the Quran. So Quranists say, no, women do not need to cover, things like that. So now you have the different scholars with different opinions. They get together, and then you have 150 and 200 people all in one room discussing what they should do with alcohol in the Quran. And then a couple of 100 years ago, they decided, we should leave alcohol. Or maybe this was just a couple of decades ago. Nobody really knows what happened when exactly, because they didn't really have alcohol. But now we have this additional level, which is intention. Because the people today realize you cannot prohibit alcohol. Because if you take a cough syrup, it contains alcohol. If you take an injection, it contains alcohol. If you want to sterilize, the skin, if you want to give somebody a vaccination or something, you use alcohol. So people realize that this is stupid. Plus, you have different forms of alcohol. I mean, alcohol is just, saturated carbon with some oxygen and hydrogen attached to it. So, but the way that it is attached, you have different versions and types of alcohol. So which alcohol are you talking about? So Sharia doesn't help you in this. So humans have to do this. And now what they've come up with is, of course, you are allowed to transport a fridge which was used to carry or to cool alcohol, because your intention is not to contaminate yourself with the alcohol, but you are earning a living by transporting fridges. Or you are taking a cough medicine, you're not getting intoxicated. Your intention is to get better so that you can pray quicker to your God again. So taking a little bit of alcohol with your cough syrup is actually something positive. So you have different levels and different rulings here. So let's see what the comments have to say. Apparently, the father said, does the crash? So, Sharia is part Quran, part Hadith? Yes. Sharia is generally just rules and laws? Yes. If you join a club in KSA, you have to accept the club Sharia. Exactly. What does the club Sharia? Discount to heaven? Well, no, not really. It gives you the points, and Sharia just helps you to get along, to gain the maximum number of points. by preventing you from doing things where points get deducted. We've done the point system, and there you go. What the fuck was that? Maybe you can combine it by killing infidels if the club is a gun club. Exactly. So you get points. Okay, we've done the whole point system. So you get points for praying, you get points for praying in different locations and blah, blah, blah. And you also get points by, for converting people, for example. So you get 2,500 points if you convert somebody to Islam. They don't have any retention period. So you don't get a bonus if the guy stays for 5 months or 6 months or 12 months, which usually is not the case because somebody who converts leaves again after a couple of days after they realize what it is. So, I mean, the word noise that was still something. Oh shit, is my phone? No, it's nowhere near it. Okay, I've moved it, so I hope it doesn't happen again. I'm sorry, because normally I move the phone well away from the microphone because I know this ugly noise. And I do not get any feedback. I'm sorry about that. I've moved the phone, so I'm hoping that it's no longer there. Muslims say no alcohol is permitted, but how much is allowed? Exactly. And you see, this is now where intention comes in and what form of alcohol and blah, blah, blah. So this is quite complicated. I never understood why God of the Jews wanted burnt meat, bloody weird if you ask me. Yeah, because he liked the smell of burnt blood. I mean, it says so in the Old Testament. The God in Islam is a little bit, I think he's even weirder and more freaky, because I don't think that the sheep cares whether it's pointing towards Mecca, and if somebody says to it, listen dear sheep, I'm now going to kill you, or whether it says the Bismillah, I don't think the sheep really cares. But this is what the halal and all this meat is. I never quite get this. Anyway.
Can I just point something out
here? The Jews wanted burnt meat.
Stop spamming.
Sorry, let me just see it. Yes, Ike?
Because GPS asked about the burnt meat. You talked now like an hour now, yes, all by yourself.
Yes.
Just to bring a little bit something different, maybe in this case. I just finished last week. The book by Goldziher about Hebrew and myths. And why is it that this God liked so much meat, like burnt meat? And why didn't he took the offer of the fruits and the plants, and instead he liked more the meat, the offering of meat itself and blood, to say. Well, if you read the book, it gets more and more clear what is happening. That is just the case of the nomads, the Bedouins, tribes who wanders from one place to another place to another place. They did care much about their camels, horses, horses not that much, but about cattle in general was precious to them. And for them was also the moon and the night sky very important, because it's cooler, you can wander much further, you have much more energy for that. So it is that is the process of getting into agriculture, in an agriculture system. The whole time the offering is done with meat, with animals. It is still the thought of the nomad, of the people. And after a while, the people get settled, and that is the point where agriculture drive and arises in general, and gets more and more out of it. And the big point is Noah in this case, and Noah is also the very more important part of a sun myth cult. So he is the one who makes wine, who doesn't know how to settle, how to fix things, etc. And that is the point where water is not that much important for the night, etc. But the settling is more important. I don't know how to explain everything because the book is very wide-ranged, and you find so many things, and you get many explanations and many answers.
But from a historical point of view,
there is not much history behind the whole thing. That's the interesting thing.
oh, okay.
The history in general is just that the people were wanderers at the one time and became just settlers at the time. And the whole thing about Adam and Eve, one is the night and one is the day, and the son, one of his son is also the day, and the other is the night, and the day brings the fruits, and the night is for the nomads, etc. And this goes all the way till maybe the first real, how to say, historical person. You can't really find a historical person, only the historical events like the Bible thing, where people get into exile by, was it Nebuchadnezzar, who took them and who destroyed the city of the Jews, etc. in Jerusalem. That's the real first impression, a real historical event. But in case of persons, of rituals, etc., that was all myth in the beginnings. The people didn't know what to make out of this myth at all.
Yeah,
so if you want to...
But the Bible goes absolutely crazy with this. I mean, the way that it describes, I mean, the only person on this planet who is really, like, he was the good guy. And he's the one who was saved, and his family was saved. And the moment they touch ground, the first thing they do, they have a barbecue and get drunk. I mean, that for me is weird. I mean, this alcohol thing in the Bible is rampant. The same thing as the only good guy in Sodom and Gomorrah is Lot. So he gets saved, and then every night he gets drunk and has sex with his daughters. I mean, and this is the only righteous guy that you have. So alcohol plays a huge role in Judaism.
Yes, well, but you mentioned also Lot, and Lot is the same like Noah. He is also the one sun myth person who keep away the night and also mark the point of settling.
Okay. So this I've heard this sort of this hyper spiritual interpretation where Jesus is also, this is what Richard Carrier says as well, where he goes into this and he describes Jesus as the mythical, spiritual, soul-cleansing sort of God who is invented at some stage, and then he gets inserted into Christianity, where he was not a person at all, but it was just a spiritual, I don't know, some mythical interpretation or reincarnation or manifestation of some spirit.
Well, it's not about spirit even. That's an interesting thing. It's all about myth, and the myths in general don't have to do anything with spirituality. It just describes how ancient people saw things in nature and made out of nature some persons and stories. That's the thing in myths.
So taking it into a different level and different realm altogether. Away from reality.
Because if you look at history, you will not find a ruler named really Solomon or David, but David is called the Red One. And if you look at the whole thing, if you read the book, I mean, it's so fantastic, this book, because it explains so many little things. And but first you have to read the Bible. That's the important thing, because you get confused if you don't read the Bible first. And he is called the Red One, and the Red One is the sun when it rises at the morning, about the first 50 or 20 minutes, and then it becomes white, etc. That's the whole interesting thing. So people made out of things they see in nature, like the night sky, like the sun, make story out of it, and that's also another mark in the story of the nomads settling is also the story with Moses, who lets the Levites kill his fellowships because they made a cow out of as a god to worship it. Yeah. That was still the point where the nomads had more to say, because the Levites came from the word Leviathan, means like the snake, and the snake was also connected to the water in the night sky, and the night sky is general for nomads. So they're still the nomads still had more power at that point. And so the Levites kill the sun worshipper. It's very simple if you think about it, because the sun is in many cultures depicted as a cow. If you look at Egypt, the nearest point, it's Hathor, the sun goddess, which is depicted mostly as a cow with the sun on over the head, or in ancient Hindu text, if you look at the Hadith, you see the cow also as a sun. So that is very interesting. It doesn't really have to do with history at all. That's the point I just wanted to mention.
It is, because it's a historical, or it's a development in history where you see a reasonable explanation in the way that if you take a simple view of what people see and then try and conceptualize this and then bring in some explanation into it, then this is where you come up if you don't have any knowledge.
Well, okay, yeah, it's a history in the way of human development. Okay,
exactly.
That you can say.
Exactly, yeah.
That is. Yes. I just wanted to say something because you talked 1 hour, so.
Yeah, I know, it's actually quite strenuous. It's quite stressful but this is a topic which is quite heavy, but there are so many things that are going on in Sharia, and here it would be nice to have somebody else like Klingshaw, because this was nice when he had the the texts available, which gives you a break. I mean, we would be saying the same thing, but he would be saying it from a quote point of view, and I would just be saying what it means. So this was always excellent. Okay, so let me just recap a bit. So we've got Sharia, which is quite superficial. It's based on what a person believes the Quran and the Hadith say, and this then gets reinterpreted to say, okay, this is what the God wants. And we were just talking about alcohol, and then looking at the comments here. It's exactly that. All fruits are capable of fermentation. I mean, even things like, I mean, you get vodka, you get the craziest things. All you need basically is sugar, because this siddiq that you get in Saudi Arabia. I mean, everybody has alcohol there if you want it. It's just not publicly available, and it's not advertised. But other than that, you get it at every party. They just take sugar and then add, sometimes they add fruit, sometimes not, and blah, blah, blah. So we have different ways of creating and coming up with alcohol. And the fructose is perfect for this, and it starts fermenting, so you can't stop it. So if God wanted to stop this, why didn't he come up with fruits that don't ferment? I mean, again, it's so nonsensical if you look at it from a God perspective. If you go and you pretend you are God, would you go and create a universe with billions and billions and zillions of stars and planets if you want one single flat earth for some humans who throw themselves on the ground and worship you? No. Then you go into all the other questions. Would you then go and create alcohol and then tell people, yeah, but hang on, you've had alcohol now for 200,000 years, but now now, if you touch this now, you've had it, my boy. And the funny thing is, what is the consequence? What is the consequence? And this is now where the Sharia really falls short, because the consequence is zero. Because what happens if you don't drink alcohol, you go into heaven because you believe that there's a God. Now, if you believe a God and you do drink alcohol, what happens to you? Can you be denied heaven the same way as a pagan, as an atheist? No, you can't. So you go to heaven as well, even if you do drink alcohol. So there's no real consequence in the whole thing. So humans have come up with consequences because they realized, oops, we have a problem here. Why should people be afraid of that? Because nothing is going to happen to them. So they've invented something like jail. but in the implementation of the Islamic sort of glasses that you need to put on, because you have the black and white, you have the yin and the yang, you have heaven and you have hell. So if you're a good guy, you go to heaven. If you're a bad guy, you go to hell. But what happens if you're a little bit of a bad guy? There's no provision for that. So humans had to come up with something, and they say, well, you go to hell for 5 days. So now humans have come up with this thing that certain crimes, well, they're called sins, okay, because a God decrees something, and if you don't do that, it's a sin, not a crime. So these sins, certain sins, are now allocated a certain level of punishment, just like jail time in the human thing. So you have different sins with different number of days in hell. And now the funny thing in hell is that, this is like torture, but like really torture, because it burns your skin. I mean, you can't feel it, you're dead. Okay, so I don't know how that works. But anyway, you're supposed to feel something when you're dead, and the skin gets burnt, and then just like the hymen gets restored in the virgins up in heaven, your skin gets restored. So that the next day, because they keep days and nights like on earth, so at night you probably sleep, and then the next day when the devil wakes up again, then he carries on torturing you. And now overnight you get a new skin, it grows back somehow, and then it burns again. This is so stupid. Anyway, they've come up with this idea that now you have different levels of punishment for this. Now, the thing is, and this is exactly, now GPZ comes exactly to the point that I want to make. But now, if you drink a little bit of alcohol on earth, it doesn't really do anything to you, because if you go to hell for 2 days, how is that a punishment? If for eternity you're going to be in heaven, what's 2 days in hell? I mean, that's quite stupid. 2 days in hell, and then you get to enjoy all these full-bosomed virgins which are at your disposal. I mean, why worry about it 2 days or 5 days or 5 weeks in heaven? Why would any Muslim pray? Why would he not drink alcohol? Why would he go on Hajj if he just has to spend a couple of hours in hell?
Well, even if it's like 1 million or 1 billion year, I mean, it doesn't matter, because you will be for eternally. It never ends in heaven, so it doesn't matter.
It's so childish. It's like really primitive. It's so it's simple. Exactly. So, and then on top of that, if you drink a little bit of wine here on earth, you get punished. But when you don't, and you go to heaven, then you can go monkey and you can drink as much wine as you want to, because they have entire rivers. But now the interpretation is that the devil made the wine on earth. So I wonder who did the plumbing in heaven if it contains wine. If the devil came up with wine, the devil must have been in heaven, installed the plumbing there so that you have all the rivers of wine there, and then gone down to hell. I wonder if you get wine in hell. I think, if I were the devil, my marketing scheme would look something a little bit different. I would make it look like a pool bar, okay, where everybody's just hanging out, everybody's naked. You can have as much sex as you want to, not with virgins, but with the girls who actually they know how to have sex, not a virgin. So the good girls go to heaven and the bad girls go everywhere. You know this joke. So you go to hell. All the interesting people are in hell. Because you have Christopher Hitchens. Oh no, Christopher Hitchens, he discusses with God and he manages to get into heaven anyway. So he outwits God easily. But you have all the interesting people left in hell, and you can sit then, like in the warm water, sipping on pina colada or whatever, drink you Planters punch or whatever you like. And you have all these gorgeous girls hanging around. I mean, this would be my marketing scheme if I were the devil. I wouldn't allow anybody to think that this is like a bad place, really. And if the devil is so strong and so powerful and more powerful than God, then I think the devil should rethink his marketing scheme. Anyway, so we have.
Can we go? Can we still mention here about the alcohol? Because I think it should be a little bit fair about this alcohol thing in the Quran. There are stories, hadiths, and maybe they are real. Maybe they clear up things about people who were drunk and in the mosque because they were drunk, or I think also puked in the mosque because they were drunk, and therefore God brought up new verses to forbid things who make you dizzy or who make you not that human that you are normally, so to say. So well, just to make it a little bit fairer.
If you look into history, because the history in Islam basically starts with the Umayyads, okay? You have a couple of texts before that, but basically it's Muawiyah. And if you look at Muawiyah, I mean, he was a guy, he didn't live in Medina or Mecca or something. No, he was in Damascus, okay? And he was a party animal. He was drinking, he was whoring around, he was having, like a good life. And this is when we have the first accounts, and we hear that there was a real drinking problem. That people loved their alcohol and they loved their women. And this is exactly why Islam came around, because they wanted the people to fight. So they said, no more women, no more alcohol. You can do that later in heaven when you're dead. But here on earth, yes, buddy, you got to fight, okay? Stop this whoring around and partying. Now you got to fight. That's how it goes. And if you look at the historical development, where, yes, the people were drinking alcohol, they had the alcoholic problem, and then they stopped. So this is another positive aspect of Islam. The people were, they became more disciplined, and they were more readily prepared to go and fight instead of partying. So that was another side effect that they had by interpreting it this way. Because it's not in the Quran, it's just 300 years later when humans came up with these stories, and that was the whole thing. Did we cover alcohol now? So let me just recap. Alcohol is mentioned in the Quran 0. The only thing that you have there is something which is used as a blanket, which is covering, which is clouding. And this is interpreted as meaning that it is clouding your brain, your mind. And this is interpreted as meaning, yes, there is some good in alcohol initially, and then slowly you should stop it, and then like it's prohibited. But it doesn't say it. I mean, the word haram, the forbidding, is not mentioned in connection with this at all in the Quran. There's only, you are strongly advised to not do blah, 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 blah. And then there are various interpretations of this. This is the Quran. And it's only then in the Hadith and the Sirah where it is mentioned that you don't touch alcohol. Ace, yes, please.
Hello. I would like to clarify about the Islamic penal code that you mentioned.
Yeah, sure.
Actually, there's 3 categories. First of all, there's takzir, which is punishment given by the judge based on his discretion, like the example that you gave about the parent who didn't take care of his kids. So,
okay.
And second is qisas, which is eye for an eye, meaning if somebody throw acid at your face, then you can ask the court to do the same thing. And the third one is hudud, which is punishment that is in the Quran and Hadith, like theft, robbery, apostasy, and adultery. The problem is that I want to highlight is this hudud punishment. First, it's vague. Second, even in a lot of Islamic countries, they don't apply this. They use normal civil court because in Islam, you only can have the evidence is based on 4 different a witness. So even though you have something like DNA or CCTV footage, in Islam you cannot prosecute somebody because 1,000 years ago they don't use the same legal system that we have today.
Interesting. Okay. But now, do you have examples? Is this based then on precedents, or is it still at the discretion of the judge?
When it comes, I think this problem has been discussed because in Malaysia there are one state that is ruled under the Islamic Party that is trying to introduce hudud, meaning chopping hands or lashing based on the Islamic law. And but they cannot apply this because again and again they have failed to show how to implement the proposal that they give.
Yeah,
for example,
is then taken from a human. Is then any human, any judge, any scholar can then decide what it is.
Yes. According to the in Malaysia, we have all 14 different states which have their own Sharia court, and every state they have their own what you call penal law when it comes to family and so on. But when it comes to hudud, it will never be implemented because the problems that I mentioned earlier.
Okay. It is amazing what people have to believe and what people have to do before this makes any kind of sense. I mean, this for me is always the most amazing part, that people believe this, that people simply accept it, and they will go to a Sharia court thinking that this has anything to do with a God and with any kind of a legal understanding. Exactly what, as you pointed out just now. And what I just said, I mean, this is so true, because there was this rumor that Coca-Cola uses alcohol to sterilize the bottles, and there might be some molecules of alcohol left in a Coca-Cola bottle. Some Muslims are now stopping drinking Coca-Cola because they are afraid that there could be some alcoholic molecules left in a bottle somewhere. I mean, this is exactly what Ace has just said, that the implementation is then completely arbitrary. It doesn't make sense then. It's definitely not clear-cut. And you can have different regions and different areas. I mean, I think everybody now knows about the madhabs, about the different interpretations, which are based on humans once again. So it's human interpretation, which gives you the general rulings in the different madhabs. And then again, you have what Aziz just said, the individual rulings then in the courts, depending on the whims and wishes of one guy. That's amazing. And then he declares what it is. I mean, what happens if you have a cross-country, what would you call it, sin? If you have somebody who, if a woman uses sex to commit a sin, to have somebody else commit another sin against the Islamic Ummah, is that then, which one does that belong to? Does it belong to family? Does it belong to sex? Does it belong to apostasy? Does it belong to something else? So there's different things that belong to different categories, and you don't really know which one it is.
one example that I have is
Yes, you're going to bring an example. Excellent, because you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get myself a beer.
one example is when it comes to marital rape. In Islam, there's actually no definition that says rape is wrong. It's only zina, which means pre-marital sex or sex out of marriage. So if somebody accuses you of rape under Sharia court, it is under zina. But what if the crime is marital rape, meaning a husband forces the wife to have sex? That is actually not zina. So you don't have a clear cut. Is it supposed to be zina, or how do you prosecute somebody who forces their wife to have sex?
Exactly, yeah.
Another thing is a lot of wives cannot get a divorce from the court because there was a hadith that says a man can have sex with his wife even on the back of a camel. So the Sharia court does not recognize that as rape. That's the problem.
And what happens if it happens on a motorbike now? Is that the same as on a camel?
And what is with the regions without camels? I mean, Malaysia doesn't have much camels as far as I know.
But they have more motorbikes.
Yes.
But the Hadith doesn't talk about motorbikes. That is what I want to know.
Then
I think the Hadith is saying that. I think the interpretation is man can have sex with his wife whenever he wants. So then the Sharia court says, oh no, that's allowed. There's no rape in Islam. But in Malaysia, they have to do it much more complicated because you have two courts. One to deal with the sexual assault, and then when it comes to divorce, you have to go again and apply for divorce. So there's much more complicated issue when it comes to
so you have like a criminal and then the family.
Yeah.
So it's okay.
Because it's different jurisdiction.
Well, I mean, it's the same in Roman law. I mean, if you take any court today in a non-Islam country, you have the same principle. Because a criminal court is always different to like a small claims court or something like this. So you have different levels of courts there as well. So this is then represented because I mean it doesn't work any other way. It's just that in Sharia it is so so much based on interpretation and so much based on personal interpretation that you don't really know what the case is. And then you look at the way that is now if you go to a court, is it now the principle that the man is a degree above the woman? Or is there some sort of, because there's a contradiction. In the Quran it says the man is a degree above the woman, but in Allah's eyes, they are the same. So which one do you apply? Do you say, well, God says they're the same, so they must be the same? Or do you say, well, actually, no, it's the man a degree above the woman? So which one do you apply?
Well, to be a little more precise, the same in the perspective of believing, but not in the same way of judicial aspects. Just in the way of how God sees as a believing creature, not as a judicial creature. So I think the first thing applies more here about the 1 degree higher, the man 1 degree higher.
I think the problem here is when one court doesn't recognize the other court's ruling. So it's hard to. It's still a different issue when it comes to divorce and sexual assault.
I'm just saying, I've just found out by personal experiment that there's nothing like a cold beer when you've got a sunburn. Okay, we're talking about cold beer, but now Lamina Flo says, isn't the worst level in heaven supposed to be really cold? Well, again, it depends whom you ask and it depends where you read. Because in the Quran you have 3 levels of heaven. Now, they're not specified. So nobody really knows why you have three different levels. They're not, I don't know, they're not distinguishable. In the Hadiths, then, it is the people that are more pious will go to the higher level. What more pious is, nobody knows. A martyr automatically goes to the top. So if you kill a lot of other people, so if a Shia kills a lot of Sunnis, he goes to the highest level. Or does he? Nobody knows. And this is the problem in this whole thing. So you have three different levels of heaven, which have their various interpretations. So humans, again, have said, well, no, it's actually the ones, I mean, it's like first class, business class, and economy class in an aeroplane. So the guys that are in the front are the ones who did the most good for Allah. Do they get any better treatment? Do they get more virgins? Do they get more wine? Do they get... No, there's no such difference. The only thing is that you are closer to God. How you can be closer to God, to an omnipresent God, I do not understand. Because God is not part of this universe. He's outside of the universe. So how close can you get to this God who is not part of the universe? The whole thing is not thought out. There's no worst level or best level in heaven. It's all about the waiting time. Now the whole point is, if you want to spend an eternity in heaven, you need to wait a certain amount of time before you get there. Now you've got, I don't know how much, 1,300 million Muslims at the moment. If you count all the Muslims that have ever arrived on this planet and have been there, maybe you're talking about, 3 billion or 4 billion. Now, if they all come and stand at the pearly gates, then this will take a certain amount of time before they can get in. So they need to wait in limbo for all this time. So because first come, first serve, the moment you pick a number and you draw a number from the waiting list, you then have to wait. And the thing is, the more good deeds you have done, the lower the number will be, the sooner that you can get to heaven. And this is why you have the express lane for the martyrs. And they can also go and then plead for their family and ask them to be automatically assigned to heaven. Because remember, a Muslim doesn't really know, even if it's a good Muslim, whether he will be accepted to heaven, because it's still a God there, well, Jesus, who says yes or no. So it's like the old Roman emperor, either you get the thumbs up or you get the thumbs down. So you don't know this. But if you are a martyr, then you are guaranteed a place in heaven. So the more good deeds you do, the better, the lower your number, the less your waiting time, and the higher your probability of getting into heaven. All right, so we've done that as well. Nothing get colder than absolute zero. Well, nothing can get colder than absolute zero. There is something colder than absolute zero. Does that mean the worst level in hell is minus 275, 273.5? That's 0 degrees Kelvin, but that's not... Hell is the heat, not cold. The worst level in heaven, but nothing get colder than absolute zero. Does that mean the worst level in hell? No, it's heaven or hell. Okay, I do not know. I'm always confused by this, because hell is supposed to be the hot place and heaven is supposed to be the moderate temperate place with air conditioning. In science, heaven is hotter than hell. In science, I like in science, heaven is hotter than hell. Can you, what scientific branch is that? The heaven scientific branch. They
First, you have to define heaven.
Case suns is hotter than Walter. Sorry, say again.
First, you have to define what is heaven. I mean, we are also in the heaven of the universe. If you look at this point, so it doesn't make sense.
No talking to Allah on the great white phone. No, not really. If they chop a hand off, will the thief, when he dies, get fully grown hand? No, but hang on. It's even. I was going to end on this, but let me bring it up now. What happens in heaven? I mean, the first thing that happens when you're a male baby is that a piece of you gets chopped off. Okay, the tip of the penis has to go. I mean, definitely. I mean, Allah made such a bad job of humans that the first thing that you need to do is chop off the tip of the penis. And then I say, well, hang on, no, it's not God that made the mistake. It's the human, because the male has to somehow create this covenant with his God. So, and this is why he needs to chop off the tip of his penis and it's so crazy. Anyway, do you get this back when you go to hell? When you get to heaven? Or do you not get it back? What happens if you have a heart transplant? What happens if you have a third kidney? Because normally they don't take out the bad kidney, just add another kidney, a transplant. Does that get taken out again and then you go to heaven with your bad kidney? Or even worse, a lot of circumcisions get botched. Then you have to amputate the penis, and then you get a different penis from somebody else. Now, if you have a malfunction of the penis, does that mean when you get to heaven you don't have a penis? Or do you get an artificial penis? Or do you get somebody else's? How does that work? Is that thought out? No.
Well, more interesting is I think the transgender.
And
What is about them?
Yes.
They want to be female or male, and now what will they get? What they want or what they are born with?
It really does not make sense, especially if you look at the Jewish Bible. If you look at the Tanakh, if you read there, what happens? I mean, humans are created in God's image. So, which image is that? Is that like male, female? I don't know. Are they is God a hermaphrodite? It's like with both male and female. And what happens to a hermaphrodite in Islam? Are they considered male or female? Which way are they? I mean, how do you determine the gender? You can't. No, this is definitely not thought out. You can't in Islam. It says bonk me, one girl will nag her until she does. That's probably how it works. The coil and the loop and the spring, women are like a motorbike. Okay, I don't understand that. The coil, the loop, the spring, women are like a motorbike. If somebody understands this, please let me know. You can kickstart a Yamaha though. I think it's more fun to have sex with a woman than a bike. A man needs sex with a woman like a fish needs sex with a bicycle. What? Can't be. That could mean we see fishes buying a bicycle on the sea. I guess it was motorbikes and bikes and rivers where they clean. 1 in 10 people are gay. God has a poor soul production line with it. Yeah, but I mean, I've shown so many times that God has a huge failure rate. I mean, he fails 80% of the time. Remember that God creates all humans to worship this God. Everything is created to worship this God. Even a rock on the moon is supposed to worship this God. But then only in humans this doesn't work. Because they are Sikhs, they are Hindus, they are atheists, they are whatever, but they're not Muslims. And this, because only a fifth, only 20% of the population are Muslims, this means that with only 20%, he is a success, and with 80%, he's a failure. So the failure rate of this God is 80%. It's not very good, I think.
I think he makes, in general, the whole humanity has failed. Because if you look at it, many people are born with bad eyes, so they need glasses, yeah. or have some issues with their body at all. So God does, in general, I think, a very, very, very poor job. The only perfect human being would be, I think, Muhammad.
He didn't have glasses, he didn't have a hearing aid, he didn't have high cholesterol, he didn't need any kind of insulin or anything like that, exactly. And he had a perfect heart, but he couldn't eat the right grapes to stop, no dates. He forgot to eat the right and correct form of dates to stop him dying from poison.
But let us stay at the Sharia. I mean, yeah. Is it allowed for humans to change the creation of Allah? In general, a Muslim has to say no. Do we agree on this?
No, there's nothing in the Quran. There's only Hadith which says that you are supposed to take care of your body because it doesn't belong to you. Whatever God creates belongs to God. So you are not the owner of your own body. God is. So God has to look after your body. So if you have to maintain Again, the thing is intent. If you change your body, like if you create, if you get bigger boobs does not help you in any way in worshipping. So what you are supposed to do, if, for example, you have an accident which cuts off your wrist or something, then it is beneficial to get an artificial hand so that you can pray properly again. Because with a missing hand, you can't take the 7-bone position. So there it is beneficial. But bigger boobs does not make you pray better. So there is a distinction here between what is beneficial in your worship. Again, the intent is the thing. So if you intend to worship God better by having an artificial limb, then yes, if not, it's prohibited.
Okay, but what is with all the people in the coma?
Well, no, that's, you see, now you're getting
Is
technical.
this allowed?
It doesn't work. No, of course not. Of course not, because they should be. I mean, what do you say to a guy who falls into a coma in Mecca during Hajj in Ramadan? I mean, this is the highest thing that you can get to go to heaven. So that if you die on Hajj in Mecca, then you're also guaranteed the fast track to heaven. But now, what happens if they put him into an artificial coma and keep him suspended? Then maybe he comes back, maybe he travels somewhere else, maybe he goes back home and dies. And now he has to wait again to see if this God will allow him to go into heaven, where if they would have let him die a week earlier, then he would have had a guaranteed ticket to heaven. So, how does this work? Why doesn't somebody like LDM or GDM or whatever they're called now, why don't they address these kind of issues? What happens if you get healed in Mecca instead of letting you die, and then you go home and then you die? The next topic, are there countries where Sharia is implemented? Now, this is such a stupid question, and Muslims ask this all the time. The problem is that nobody knows what Sharia is. There is no definition of Sharia. There is no book called "This is Sharia." So is Sharia implemented? No. Yes. Well, no. Well, it is. No, it's not really. So what is, then you're back, what is Sharia and what is the implementation of it? So Saudi Arabia says, we are under Sharia. We are taking the implementation and the integration and all the intentions that this God has, and we are implementing them in Saudi Arabia. Well, no, they're not. Because now another country comes along, like Iran, and says, sorry, the Islamic Republic of Iran, and says, no, because you don't have this, and you have one family running everything, and you don't have the caliph, and you don't have this, you don't have this, you don't have this. So you're not using the proper version of Sharia. And then Daesh come, or Boko Haram, or anybody comes around, or the Taliban, and say, no, you both got it wrong. Actually, it's our version which runs like this. Yeah, but then, it just carries on and on and on. And then in Malaysia, or let's go to Indonesia, where you have the most Muslims, they go along and say, no, everybody else is wrong, we are right. And it can't, because there is no definition of Sharia. And everybody says, no, there is no, and this is the political statement, there is no proper implementation of Sharia anywhere on this planet, which is why we want to go back to the houses, because you have the two houses, you have the house of Islam and the house of non-Islam, the house of peace and the house of war. Because remember, we learned that Islam is not about peace the way that we understand it, but peace is worshipping one God. So as soon as you have the house of peace, which means that everybody is worshipping their God, then in effect you are using Sharia, because you have everybody submitting and succumbing to the same God, and then it's the same implementation which is being put upon you by the dictator, by the caliph. There you go, then you have Sharia. But at the moment, people are saying we don't have a proper implementation of Sharia. Now the question is, was there ever a nation, a region or country where Sharia was properly implemented? And here again, we have so many different versions. Some people say, yes, there was, because the rightly guided caliphs in the beginning, in other words, if we're looking at Abu Bakr, if we're looking, I mean, all the way up to Ali, those were proper implementations of Sharia. How were they properly implemented? Well, no, we don't know that, but they were. So it does not make sense. This is just people giving you their personal opinion and their personal interpretation of this thing. And this is where all the problems start, because if you start a discussion with a Muslim, this is why it would have been beautiful and brilliant if there would have been a Muslim here today to explain what their variation and their interpretation of Sharia actually is, and to see that this is not me making shit up. This is really the way that it is, that there is no real implementation of Sharia. And people will argue, yes, there is, because here we have this, because this is the Sharia, the way it was originally intended by the four rightly guided caliphs 1,415 years ago. It's crazy, but it's not. So what do we learn from this? Nobody really knows what is going on. So Sharia is something that is based on interpretation, based on the Quran and the Sunnah, neither of which is clear on anything, both of which are nonsensical, and then you just add a touch of human to it, so that in the end, for example, with the inheritance, I've shown, because the funny thing is you get inheritance calculators on the web, because humans have developed these wonderful things within the internet. So you enter, okay, I have one guy, he has 100,000 pounds, and he has one auntie, and he has one this, and two this, and three this, and two this, and one this. How much do they all get? And then it calculates it for you. Then it says, well, you're oversubscribed, but so let me apply, and now it starts. Which version of Sharia would you like? Because now you have different rulings. So now you go according to madhabs, okay? So now you need to specify which ruling of which human interpretation you would like, and then they apply the ruling of that particular human. And then they say, well, actually one daughter gets 15/96 of this, and she gets 1,200 pounds, and he gets this, and she gets this, and things like that. So this is,
let us show the people.
you found one, yeah. They are hilarious. So if you enter a couple of numbers into there, you get. I don't know if you
I have 3 wives. I have 3 sons, 3 daughters, 6 grandsons, 6 granddaughters. The father and mother is still alive, and 4 brothers and 10 sisters. Let us see what we get.
Yeah, but you have to specify which one.
Which one? What?
Specify which madhab.
Which mother? What? What do you mean?
The madhab. You have to tell them which legal interpretation you want to use.
School of thought, madhab.
Well, that I can't hear. I just can calculate this one, but I think it's enough to show the.
What is it shown on top? Come again. Hang on. Let me put you on permanent. Oops.
What should I click?
I put you on permanent. No, I didn't. Why can't I put you on permanent?
I think you did.
According to authentic Quran and Sunnah, but it doesn't tell you which one. Legally married, multiple wives, anyone. Go down. Brothers, paternal fathers. Please note, non-Muslim relatives are not eligible. Yeah, this is another thing. If you are a Muslim and there are non-Muslims in your family, they get zulch. They might, however, receive a bequeath. If the wife is expecting a child delivery, then the baby will receive the share. You see, the relatives not in the above list are not among the standard. Okay. The standard heirs. There's no such thing as standard heirs, because you have to specify which interpretation, which version you're taking. So this is a bit too simple. But there you go. This is the implementation of Sharia the way that it works. Okay. It's completely arbitrary, and there you see the shares, and there you see 1336 of something. Yeah, so you get 36.11%, and this is not what the Quran says. Okay, the daughter also with 1372. This is ridiculous. The mother, and this is now the interesting part. Can you put your mouse down a little bit? The father, and here what is funny is that father and mother get the same, because they both get a sixth, which is according to the Quran. So this is correct. Father and mother 1/6, absolutely correct according to the Quran. But there are a lot of Islamic inheritance calculators which don't do that. The father gets a sixth, and then the mother gets a much lower share, because women get less. The grandson doesn't get it. The son gets 36%, and the daughter only gets 18%, which is half. So here it's also correct according to what the Quran says, that the daughter only gets half of what the son gets. So she inherits much less, and the reasoning behind that is that she can keep all her money, she can use it for makeup or whatever, which she's not allowed to use, but she does not have to spend it on anything, which is absolute bullshit, because we're in the 21st century. So the daughter can be a single mother, and the son can be just, lying on the beach in Aruba and not doing anything. But the son gets more money than the daughter gets, even though she has a kid and she has to work for the family where the son doesn't. So it's pretty unfair. Anyway,
doesn't the brother and sister also get something in the Quran? I thought so.
Yes, but if there is no brother,
But I had 4 brothers and 10 sisters.
Full brother and full sister. Okay, this is, if you go into 4:176, it says yes, they should get. So this is quite strange that here they would not get this. Maybe they have a reasoning why they don't get anything.
Because you have a son and daughters.
Yeah, but you have the grandson who gets 0.72s also. The granddaughter doesn't get anything. So here you only have the wife who gets something, son, daughter, and father, mother. Finished. End of story.
Here are some rules. If somebody wants to read them later.
Husband, wife, daughter, granddaughter. Deceased has only one granddaughter from a son. Deceased does not have a son or a daughter, and so on. Can you go down which ruling this is? Does it say which one they use?
I don't think so.
Rules.
No.
No. Strange. Because normally they mention it. Okay, so there you go. This is how it works. This is the implementation of Sharia in a family Sharia case, where the judge has to rule how much do you get. Then he enters everything here, and then he has to go and say this is because of this, because the Quran says this and this and this, and then this is the ruling, and this is then his interpretation. Thank you for that. Then we have a man. If 10 people are gay, got it. Yeah, it doesn't matter that there are different bits of Sharia as long as the specific Sharia is known for that area. Yeah, exactly. But there is no one single Sharia, and it's always for this area, for this region. And that could mean that it's up to individual courts to make judgment, no different from UK common law. Yeah, but there is, you see, this is exactly the thing. But this is the discrepancy between a claim and reality. Now, the UK does not claim that their laws are applicable to France or to Peru or whatever. But in Islam, you have one single set of rules, the Sharia. And the Sharia is not one single set of rules. So you have many different versions, even though it claims that every Muslim is treated the same, and it's not. And this is the whole point, claim and reality. I think there are as many versions of Sharia as there are versions of Islam. Number of Muslims, exactly. I mean, I estimate there to be something like 11,000 different versions of Islam. And then you have 11,000. Well, you have 1.5 billion different versions of Islam, because every Muslim has a different exegesis and a different tafsir, so a different interpretation. In general, yes, the issue we have with Islamic Sharia is that it's viewed from point of pleasing God, exactly. Hypocritical, there are many versions of Western secular law as there are Western countries. Yes, this is absolutely true, but there is no claim that any Western country, or I don't know what Western country means. Japan is Western country. So there's no country that says it's applicable everywhere, but Islam makes the claim that it is. That's not the discussion. It's different and valid point. Yeah, but Western law isn't claiming to be divine. And that is on top of that, exactly. So these are the different versions and views. Now, hypocritic oath. What is the discussion? What is different and what is a valid point? We're talking about Sharia. Sharia is supposed to be implemented, the view, vision, decree, wishes, commands, prohibitions from one single God to everybody. Now to all of mankind, all humans, okay? So there is one God that says you must do this and you're not allowed to do that. And this is for every human being. There is no human legal system that does that. So the claim is one thing and reality is another. And that is what I'm pointing out here. And if I am wrong in something, then show me. Show me that every single region, every single Muslim has the same ruling for every single illegal issue. Then you would be right. And then the claims in the Quran would be right. But until that is proven and demonstrated, it's wrong. So it's that easy. Okay, is that all we have for today? Oh, it is already... Okay. I still have one Hadith of the week, which I produced because I actually thought he was gone for 3 weeks. This is why I spent the whole day in the sun today and I burnt myself. Instead of sitting here like a good boy and going through the Quran, I was gallivanting. Oh, and this was quite funny. I was actually flirting with some Muslimas because I was not a participant there. I was just watching, and so I had time to chat to people as they were walking around. And because it was Sunday, then people go to the mosque not on Friday but on a Sunday, and then suddenly you had a whole groups of Muslims suddenly coming out there to the flea market. So maybe this was near a mosque somewhere. And then there were some girls coming, and I was with a girl who was selling stuff, girly stuff, and then they came around, and then I was chatting with them, and they actually quite enjoyed this. They thought it was quite funny that somebody would be interested in how they feel about Islam in the country here and things like that. They quite enjoyed chatting. So
this is from volume 7.
They weren't really supposed to chat. They did so anyway. So this is quite funny that a stout non-believer with knowledge of Islam would go and flirt with some Muslims who are not supposed to do that. But humans are humans.
Should I play the one?
Oh, I was just getting ready for it. There you go.
This is from volume 7, book 67, 403. Narrated Ibn Abi Awfa. We participated with the Prophet in 6 or 7 ghazawat, and we used to eat locusts with him. Bon appetit.
Okay, guys, thank you very much. This was a very quick and brief introduction into what I understand what is Sharia. And of course, if I made a mistake, it's my mistake, and if it doesn't reflect on God, okay? So if God is much better than me, and he can explain this, and if he doesn't, well, then it's his own fault. I try to explain it as best I can. If I made a mistake, please point it out. If you have a better version, please bring it. Hope to see you next week. Remember that if you want to participate, you just you enter live.godless.ch. If you want to go and discuss this with us, you can always join us. You can always go and type in hangout.godless.ch. And if you want to see past episodes, just go to archive.godless.ch. Thank you very much for everybody who was watching. It was fun talking to you. And we'll see you next week for the Jinn and Tonic show.